Welcome to another video. Today we're talking about all things how to train your cleaners, and I'm so excited because this is like one of the most asked questions that I ever get. It comes in the form of a couple of different questions though, so I never get asked like, Morgan, how do you professionally train cleaners? It's more like, Morgan, I am getting complaints, and the complaints are kind of in the form of people asking for a specific cleaner. So they'll request one of the cleaners on your team, but not necessarily love the other cleaners on your team. Or maybe you're just like generally getting complaints. So I get asked, Morgan, why are we getting complaints? It seems like, there are picky clients, but there are also clients who aren't picky that are still like sending in even just minor grievances. Why is that? Like, how can we keep that from happening? So this is kind of where it gets tricky, where I answer that question, because it never stems from like one particular thing being not done correctly. So I could just answer it and say like, oh, well, if they complained about the floors, here's our SOP for the floors. This is how you would fix that process, and this is how you get a good result on that specific thing. But it's not that. It's not that simple, because it's a systemic issue. So typically what the problem is that you're not providing service in a consistent way between your entire team, right? So like one cleaner will go in there, they'll be absolutely perfect. They're gonna get everything super shiny. They don't leave a single crumb on the table. And the client's like, oh my gosh, like this looks incredible. And then another cleaner comes in and they do like a B+ job. So there's like crumbs on the table. The cleaners didn't move anything that was like decorative pieces. So you can tell in certain lights that there's a dust line, and the client's like, it looks pretty good, but it's just not as good as when so-and-so came. And so you're just like, oh my gosh, how can I make sure that it just gets done the same every single time? And like I was just saying, it's never just fixing one problem, it's solving it at the root of the issue, which is that you don't have a consistent way to train all of your cleaners. Because if you did, they would be doing the exact same SOP on every single item, every single time. Okay, so this is when I want you to get your notes out. I want this to be a super tactical video. So I do not want this to just be something that you're listening to in the car, in the background. If you are, that's fine. But I want you, when you get home, to rewatch it and actually take notes, because I'm giving you like the literal tactical way to set this up in your company, not just like broad generalizations. So let's get into it. So what I'm about to take you through are the steps that you have to take to set this up in your company. So the very first step that you need to take is to create a training manual. What's a training manual? So this is probably by far the most annoying piece of material that you have to make for this entire process, and I am sorry, but please utilize ChatGPT, because it can like cut the time in half that you have to actually put into creating this document. But you need to create a document that's an entire list of everything that you clean on site. So if you clean it, even if it's just an add-on and you don't clean it very often, but you could, it still needs to go on this document. So if it's not on this document, then you don't provide it as a service. So you don't actually do it. So if a client asks for it, it's not on this document, then you don't actually do it. So that's really, really important. This document is gonna be, like I said, an SOP for every single one of those things. So what's your SOP for cleaning a table? Do you wet wipe the top of the table, or do you just dust it? Do you wet wipe the legs, or do you just dust them? Do you wet wipe chairs, or do you just dust them? All of these things need to be actually detailed in this training manual, because it's now giving you a way to train, or your trainer, if you're lucky enough to have a trainer. If you don't, then it's gonna be you. But it's giving you an SOP for each thing. It's giving you the verbiage to train this thing to somebody else. So if you're training somebody on how to clean a table, you're not going to give them just a broad, generalized version of this training SOP. You're literally word for word telling them how to do it exactly the way that it's listed on this training manual. Okay, so this provides like an insane amount of consistency between everybody, because it's the little things that matter. So again, just as I said, how do you clean the top of a table? Literally just that will be the thing that makes it inconsistent between two people. So I need you, exactly how you clean the top of a table, it needs to be written out long form like that on this training SOP. Because when you're training it to one person, and then you're training it to the next person, and then you eventually have a trainer, and then they're training it to the next person, it's like the game of telephone, right? So you don't want anything to slip through the cracks or get lost in translation. That's why you need to be able to come back to this as a compass. Okay, I'm really passionate about that SOP, because it is the thing that actually just brings your process to life. Because your process as an owner might not be exactly the same as my process. Your processes are the thing that drives your service menu, right? Like what you guys provide on site, what your company provides, it's dictated based on how you want everybody else to do things. So you get to be the person who decides what this actually entails. And that's really important. So you need to actually decide on something and get it in this training manual. Okay, that's enough about the training manual. If you guys have any questions over that, please let me know. But again, please use ChatGPT to help you with that because it's a big project. But you do, in my opinion, need to go still line by line through that document once it's completed and make sure that it's actually in your voice. Okay, so the next thing that we're talking about is the training and retraining checklist. Why are these important? So something that I see other companies struggle with is actually tracking what new employees have been trained on. Like, not having a system at all is pretty much what I equate this to. So if you've got like a training system, but you're not actually tracking like what that trainee has been trained on and what they're good on, then you basically don't have a system at all, right? Because then you have like no real gauge for if they've actually passed your training at all. Like they could basically graduate from training, which usually people don't even have a system on that, which is what we're going to get to later. But usually people graduate from training and they're not even good yet. Like they're not even good yet. And so you send them off to houses, either solos or on a team, and they're either not good on those solos, so they get complaints, or they're holding the team back and making everything like you would just cause friction. So there's friction in how long it takes, there's friction in how long the inspection takes, there's friction because your trainer on that or whoever your lead is on that team is now having to go back and fix things, and then they have to communicate it, so that's even more time. And the client is catching things because your lead is overwhelmed because there's too many things that they need to fix, etc., etc. So please, for the love of God, have a way to track what your trainer has been actually training that new trainee on and track what they're actually good at, because that's two different things. And I say this from a place of knowing that I used to not do this, and that created that created so much chaos because we would have multiple trainees at the same time. I would be like, hey, like, where are we at on the like training with this trainee or this trainee, and it'd be different, but we wouldn't be able to track it very well, so we'd like build out the schedule the next week to try to accommodate each trainee, and like, but we really didn't know, and like it was just a mess. So I don't want you guys to do that because I've had bad experiences with it and I know what the results are of that, and they're just not good. Okay, so the way that we track this is by our training and retraining checklist. Our retraining checklist means that if there's anything on that checklist, the trainee needs to be retrained on it. So what does that mean? If somebody has been trained on, let's say, a shower glass door, and the trainee and the trainer are standing right there together, the trainer is talking them through it, they're going through the LEARN framework, they're like, this is how you do it, I'm gonna have you do it once, then I'll inspect your work, and they come back and it's still not very good. So they're like, oh, well, XYZ looks really good, but here's a couple things that need to be tweaked for next time, right? Because you're standing right there and your trainer is likely going to have to show them what the tweaks are. So if there's streaks, the trainer is probably going to have to jump in and say, here's the product that we use when there are extra streaks like this. So here's the E-rag, here's the E-cloth. We're going to wipe it over this surface right here in this area because you can see streaks from this angle. Well, now the trainer has jumped in and actually completed that glass shower. Are you going to actually mark on the training checklist that the trainee is all good on shower glass doors now? No, of course not, because you're going to send them on the next shower glass door and see if they actually comprehended what your critiques were. In that case, it would be on the retraining checklist, right? So you're like, okay, she's seen it. My girl has seen it, but she's not quite good yet on them, so I can't actually pass her on shower glass doors. So instead, I'm going to add it to the retraining checklist. Now, let's say you come back and you're like, oh my God, literally everything on the shower glass door is perfection. Maybe she has like 5 years of experience. There's literally nothing that you need to fix. In that case, it goes on the training checklist because she's all good. She doesn't need to be retrained on it. Okay, I know that seems so simple, but it's so critical. And that's the thing that actually dictates the outcome of our 30-day review, which we'll get to that in a minute. So I want to talk about one more thing before we get to the 30-day reviews, and that's a checklist for the trainer. So your trainer actually needs to have some sort of process to make sure that they train the trainees properly, right? So when they're training the trainees, they need to have a step-by-step checklist to know like, okay, here's what I'm training them next. Here's what I'm training them on next. Here's what I'm training them on next. This is really important because you're not going to always have a trainer who comes in with the skills, especially like the organizational skills, to make sure that they get trained on everything by the time they get done with training. So instead of just like willy-nilly, whatever you guys get today is fine, you're going to actually have a system in place so that it's foolproof. So that by the time you get to the 30 days, the end of training, that your trainee has actually been set up for success by showing them certain things every single day. So something that used to go wrong with this for us is and I see this go wrong in other businesses too, we would have the trainee on things for too long. So we would have them on the bathrooms for like 2 weeks. That's not sustainable because, for one, you have so many things that you need to get to in like 30 days. You need to be fast tracking what they get through so that you can make sure they see everything, right? So if they're in the bathrooms for 2 weeks, how long are they going to be in the kitchen? A week? Are they going to spend like a week on just floors? That also creates strain on the rest of the team because then you're putting your team in a position of only having, the availability of that trainee to go in certain rooms. So like, for instance, if that trainee can only go on bathrooms and there's only one bathroom in a house, then it creates a little bit of strain on the rest of the team because now if you have a 2-man, for instance, the other person now has to do the entire rest of the house while the trainee does a bathroom. It might not work very well on the schedule. So you don't want to put yourself in a position where they're in just one place for just way too long, because we used to do that because we thought we were setting the trainee up for success, because we're like, hey, if they're in the bathroom for 2 weeks, there's no way they can get any of this stuff wrong. When really that's kind of just the wrong way to look at it, because you're setting them up to not be able to see everything in the rest of the house in the time frame that you have set for training. And then also you're setting the rest of your team up to feel that like strain and friction on site because your trainees can only be like in one place. A note that I want to make about this training checklist is that usually part of that training checklist would be for the trainee to memorize the service menu, right? So the trainee would try to memorize what is included in each room because it's a nightmare when they don't know. So part of what we used to do is to make sure that the trainee was, taught what the service menu was, and then they would need to memorize it. We'd take quizzes on it, etc. So we moved away from that and started using what are called job forms. So job forms are literally just a checklist of everything that's included in each room, but it's customized for the client. I know that sounds like a lot, and please don't tune out right now because this is literally so important and helped us so much with so many things. The job forms were an actual lifesaver. It made it possible for each client, and you guys know this, each client has a slightly different either house or commercial property, whatever it may be, they're slightly different from one another, which is kind of a nightmare in our industry because it's hard to scale, right? It's hard to have the exact same process in every single house or property because we're like, the rooms are different. Like there's just a couple of different things about each place that we service, right? Something that absolutely saved us is having this clickable checklist where the cleaners would go in and they would see the specific rooms that were in their specific home that they were servicing, right? So they would have kitchen, dining room, living room, son's bedroom, daughter's bedroom, mom's bedroom. They would have literally the customized list of all of the rooms in the house for that house or commercial property. So they would have all of those rooms listed, and then within each room, it was a full checklist of what's included in that room, and each thing needed to be checked off, right? I know it sounds like a lot, but I promise you, these job forms, they absolutely changed the way that we were able to provide services because we no longer had to make sure that every single cleaner had memorized their service menu. So instead of the trainee memorizing the service menu, all they're doing is they're going into Jobber, the CRM that we host these job forms on, and they're clicking on each thing as they're going through the room. So by the time they're out of training, they've clicked through these things so many times that they already know from muscle memory what's included in a room and what's not. But even if they haven't memorized it from muscle memory, it's a foolproof system because they're still clicking through it every time. And like I mentioned, we hosted these job forms on Jobber. Jobber is actually the sponsor of this video, so thank you so much, Jobber, for sponsoring this content. If you guys are looking for a new CRM, or because maybe you don't like the one that you're using, or you're not using a CRM at all yet, I highly recommend Jobber. We used it for years before I sold my company, and I swear it was a big reason why I was able to sell. The person I sold it to actually also used Jobber, so it was like a seamless transition and everything was super organized and just ready to pass off. So Jobber like was a huge part of that, and I definitely recommend it, especially if you don't have a CRM at all. You definitely need to have one if your intention is to grow. So if you want to try Jobber, click the link below. You can try it for free. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is our 30-day reviews. The 30-day reviews are a great thing to have because otherwise you don't really have like an ending for training, right? You don't really have like, when do they graduate? Have they graduated? Are they on track? Are they doing well? Are they going too slow? Is our trainer actually being kept accountable to show them everything in a certain time frame? So there's a bunch of reasons why you need to have that 30-day review. And I say that because for the longest time, we had nothing. Like we literally had nothing that denoted the end of training. Yeah, we used to make all the mistakes. So we didn't have a tracker. We didn't have a 30-day review. We had nothing. So it would literally get to the point where we would have people on our team who had been training for 3 months and still were not trained on everything, which is a horrible situation to be in. Not only for the cleaner, because the cleaner is now like, I don't feel comfortable going to a house by myself because I haven't actually fully been trained on it yet. And then also for the trainer, because the trainer is like getting frustrated because it's taking so long, but there was no like system in place for them to follow. So they're just like not understanding why this cleaner isn't catching on. It creates a really weird dynamic, and it creates like, it doesn't set either person up for success. So what actually happens in the 30-day review? So the 30-day review consists of looking at that training and retraining checklist. So the trainer is in charge of making sure that the training and retraining checklist is filled out accurately through the time that they are training that trainee, right? So for the 30 days that they're training that trainee, the trainer is in charge of the training checklist and the retraining checklist. So they've got it updated all the time, because they're the ones they're actually seeing what's happening on site. So really, it's the trainer's job to make sure that there's nothing on that retraining checklist for that trainee by the time the 30 days are up. So it's the trainer's job to make sure that they're good to go by 30 days. But let's just say that that doesn't actually happen. And for some reason, it's taking longer than 30 days to do a couple of things. So maybe, again, it's the glass shower doors or something like that. And maybe there's just a couple of streaks left. They are leaving some hard water. They're just needing a couple things to be zipped up. At that point, you're gonna have shower glass doors on your retraining checklist, right? So when they get to the 30-day review, that trainer is going to tell them what's on their retraining checklist. And then that trainer and trainee will have 5 days of hyper-focused training on that shower glass door. So ideally, when people get to the 30-day review, there's nothing on their retraining checklist. Sometimes there will be. And so in that case, you need to have an SOP attached to that outcome so that your trainer knows what to do, right? So that trainer is going to tell the trainee, hey, we're doing 5 days of hyper-focused training on this shower glass door. So it's not like they're only doing shower glass doors in that 5 days, but like you're making sure that they're on houses that have shower glass doors. And if anybody does that shower glass door, it needs to be the trainee, right? And the trainer and trainee are working together on that shower glass door so that they can make sure the trainee knows exactly how to do it, and the trainer can see what the results are when the trainee does do it so they can pass them. So once there's nothing left on that retraining checklist, so after that 5-day increment of time, they're gonna meet again. And if there's nothing left on that retraining checklist, then they graduate and pass our 30 days of training. Okay, I know that was a lot, but just to recap what we've talked about so that you can make sure that you've got everything down in your notes. Number one, you need to have a training manual, right? So you need to have an SOP attached to literally everything that you clean on site. You also need to have a retraining and training checklist. So whatever you want your version of that to be, you just need to track to make sure that you are accurately denoting what your trainees have seen and completed on site, right? So what have they been trained on, and what are they actually up to quality on? And what are they not up to quality on? That all needs to be tracked so that when you get to your 30-day review, you can accurately pass or fail them. And if they do fail, then you're going to have 5 days of hyper-focused training on whatever was on that retraining checklist. You also need to have a training checklist for your trainer, right? So your trainer needs to know exactly what to do every single day. So we get so specific on that we literally have written down like the text that the trainer needs to send to the trainee on day one, right? So get super specific on exactly what you want your trainer to do every single day so that they just have a checklist of what they need to complete each day with the trainee.